Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. You guys know I love digging into these reports everyone's buzzing about, and this one, well, this one is a big one. We're talking about the State of AI report for 2024, and get this, it's by Nathan Benaich and Air Street Capital.
This isn't just some, run-of-the-mill report either. I mean, we're talking about Nathan Benaich. The guy's a venture capitalist who's put serious money behind some of the most exciting AI companies out there.
No kidding, he's got skin in the game.
Exactly. And not just that, he organizes this huge AI summit every year and pours funding into those, like, super interesting open source AI projects. Then there's Air Street Capital. They're right there in the thick of it, so they really know what's up in the AI world. This report is like their yearly pulse check on the entire AI landscape. It's a wild ride, trust me.
Okay, so for our listeners, the report breaks the whole AI world down into 5 main areas: research, industry, politics, safety, and even some predictions about what's coming next. We're talking about the things that are going to, really change our world and maybe sooner than we think.
And here's the thing. This isn't just about some tech stuff. This is about the future of, well, everything. We're way past AI that just writes your emails or makes those funny cat pictures. This report goes deep into how AI is cracking into some seriously complex fields. Like, imagine AI tackling math problems, figuring out biology and genomics, modeling the climate. Even the human brain is on the table now. The potential here is it's mind-blowing. And the implications, well, let's just say they're massive.
Okay. Before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's make sure we're all speaking the same language. The report uses some terms you've probably heard, like LLMs, those big language models that power things like, oh, what's that one everyone's using?
ChatGPT.
Yeah, ChatGPT, exactly. Then you've got generative AI, which is basically AI that can make new stuff. We're talking images, music, even computer code.
Right. And don't forget about diffusion. It's this really interesting algorithm the report spends some time on, and it's kind of like the engine behind some of the most impressive AI-generated stuff we're seeing these days. You know those crazy realistic pictures and videos that look almost too real to be true? That's often diffusion working as magic.
It's like having this super-powered creative partner in the digital world. And speaking of superpowers, the report calls out OpenAI's O1 as a total game changer. Imagine you're a PhD student, right? You spend a whole year writing this super complex code, and then you watch as O1 just replicates all that work in an hour. Makes your head spin.
Right.
No.
Crazy. That example from the report really shows you just how powerful O1 is. But, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. This level of power comes with a price tag, literally. We're talking 3 to 4 times more expensive to run than even GPT-4. And get this, it can't even handle images yet, and it's actually a bit slower than its predecessor. So yeah, it's a huge leap forward, but it's not some magic solution. There are some serious trade-offs. It's like they say, right. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Speaking of things that sound almost too good to be true, OpenAI isn't the only player in the game. The report also mentions that Meta's Llama 3 is really closing the gap, and get this, it's open source.
Right. That's huge. This whole open versus closed model debate is a big deal, and the report digs into it pretty deeply. Open models like Meta's Llama have this incredible power to really accelerate innovation.
How so?
Well, think about it. Anyone can just dive into the code, tinker around, and build on top of it. It's like opening up this whole playground for AI development.
That's amazing. But doesn't that also mean that someone with, less than noble intentions could get their hands on it?
That's the million-dollar question. You hit the nail on the head. While open models are incredible for creativity and collaboration, there's also this inherent risk around safety and control. It's like giving everyone the keys to a Ferrari, but no driving lessons. That's a scary thought. Speaking of scary thoughts, I found this next part kind of unsettling. The report talks about how tricky it can be to figure out how well an AI is actually performing.
Yeah, evaluating AI is a whole other beast.
They even mentioned that some of the benchmarks they use to test these AIs are full of errors. Like, they gave this example about inaccurate virology data, which honestly kind of freaked me out.
I hear you. That's a big red flag. Imagine thinking an AI is doing an amazing job analyzing viruses, but it turns out that data they trained it on was flawed. That's a recipe for disaster.
Exactly. So how do we even know if these AI systems are as good as everyone says they are?
Well, that's the challenge, isn't it? The report really emphasizes how important it is to have really robust benchmarks for evaluating AI. If we're relying on shaky data, we're basically flying blind, and that could have some serious real-world consequences.
Okay, so we've talked about the research and the big players like OpenAI and Meta, but what about the real-world impact? The report dives into the industry side of AI, and it sounds like things are really heating up.
Oh yeah, big time. There's this massive push to turn all of this cutting-edge research into actual products and services that people can use.
And who are the major players in this AI gold rush?
Well, when it comes to the hardware, there's one company that's dominating the conversation, Nvidia. They're basically the rock stars of AI chips right now.
Yeah, the report mentioned that Nvidia hit this insane $3 trillion market cap. They even talked about Jensen Huang, Nvidia's CEO, who's been pushing this sovereign AI idea. I'll be honest, I wasn't quite sure what to make of that.
So sovereign AI is this idea that each country should have the power and resources to develop its own large language model. It's kind of like saying every country should have its own, AI powerhouse.
Interesting. So what makes Nvidia so special? Are their chips really that much better than everyone else's?
It's not just about the chips themselves, though they are pretty amazing. Nvidia has spent years building up this whole ecosystem around their hardware.
What do you mean by ecosystem?
I mean, think about it. They have all the software tools that developers need to build AI applications. Plus, their support is top-notch, and they've got this huge community of users. They've made it incredibly easy for companies, big or small, to jump on the AI bandwagon.
It's like they cracked the code for AI accessibility. But even with NVIDIA's dominance, the report mentioned that some giants, like Meta, are feeling the pressure. Apparently, they're even designing their own AI chips now to rely less on NVIDIA.
Yeah, you've got companies like Meta, Google, even Amazon, all starting to realize that relying too much on one supplier, even one as big as NVIDIA, can be risky. This push for more independence is creating a fascinating chip race, with everyone vying for their slice of the AI pie.
This whole AI chip race sounds like it could have some pretty big ripple effects for, everyone, not just the big tech companies.
Oh, absolutely. This is way bigger than just some companies battling it out for market share. This chip competition could directly impact your life. We're talking about things like how much you pay for your next smartphone, or whether or not you get those cool new AI features everyone's raving about. It's all connected.
Wow, that really puts things in perspective. The report actually did this interesting little comparison of what would have happened if you'd invested in Nvidia versus some of its rivals a few years back. Let's just say sticking with Team Green would have made you a very happy investor.
Yeah, Nvidia stock has been on a tear, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
But, the report also points out that not everyone's convinced this whole Nvidia dominance is going to last forever.
Really?
Yeah, some people are saying their stock is way overpriced.
Mm.
And with all this competition heating up, who knows what the future holds? Plus, there's this whole energy consumption thing. Training these massive AI models takes an insane amount of power, and it's only going to get more intense as these models get bigger and more complex.
Yeah, that's a whole other can of worms. It's like we're pushing up against the limits of what's physically possible, even with all this mind-blowing tech. Speaking of pushing limits, the report shifts gears a bit and jumps into the political landscape surrounding AI. Things are getting kind of interesting on that front, too.
Definitely interesting. The report talks about how global efforts to create some kind of overarching AI governance framework have kind of stalled out. But on the other hand, you've got individual countries and regions that are starting to flex their regulatory muscles. Like the U.S. has this executive order that's focused on what they're calling frontier models, which are basically these super powerful, potentially game-changing AI systems. And then you've got the EU taking a very different approach with their AI Act.
Okay, hold on a sec. Frontier models. You can't just drop a term like that without giving me the lowdown. What are we talking about here?
Right, sorry. Frontier models. It's a bit of a buzzword, I know. Basically, it just means these super powerful AI systems that have the potential to really reshape society as we know it. Things like revolutionizing healthcare, disrupting entire industries, or even posing serious risks if they fall into the wrong hands. That's why they're causing such a stir on the political stage.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. So how do these approaches from the US and EU differ? They both want to regulate AI, but they're going about it in totally different ways, right?
Exactly. It's almost like two different parenting styles for AI.
Yeah.
The U.S. is taking a more hands-off approach, at least for now. They're encouraging these big AI labs to regulate themselves, kind of like saying, hey, we trust you guys to do the right thing. The EU, on the other hand, is taking a much stricter stance. Their AI Act comes with some potentially hefty fines for companies that don't play by their rules. It's more like, we're watching you, And if you step out of line, there will be consequences.
It'll be interesting to see how those different approaches play out in the long run. Now, one thing that really surprised me in the report was just how much data these companies are using to train their AI models. Like, they called out Meta specifically, saying they're using data going all the way back to 2007. That's crazy.
I know, it's kind of creepy when you think about it. All that old stuff you thought was gone forever, your old MySpace profile, embarrassing Facebook photos, those late night forum posts, maybe it's all still out there,
Yeah.
being used to train some massive AI model.
Exactly. It really makes you wonder about consent in the age of AI. Like, is it okay for a company to just use your data, even stuff from years ago, without your explicit permission?
Yeah, it's a huge ethical dilemma and one that we're all going to have to grapple with as AI becomes more and more intertwined with our lives. Okay, so we've talked about the research, the industry, the politics, and even some pretty deep philosophical questions, but we can't wrap things up without addressing the elephant in the room, or maybe I should say the AI in the room.
You're talking about the safety concerns, right? All the potential risks that come with developing this technology so rapidly. I'll admit, some of this stuff makes me a little uneasy.
I get it, it's definitely unnerving. The report talks about how we're starting to see real-world examples of AI being misused,
hmm
and that's a trend that's likely to continue.
Like, what kind of examples are we talking about?
Well, one example the report gave was this case where a company lost millions of dollars because of deepfakes, those super realistic but completely fake videos and audio recordings.
I've seen those. They're getting incredibly convincing.
Exactly. The technology is getting scarily good, and they're only going to become harder to detect. It's a huge problem,
Mm.
especially for companies and organizations that are already vulnerable to disinformation and online manipulation.
So how do we even combat something like that? It seems like it would be incredibly difficult to regulate.
It's definitely a huge challenge. But the report does stress the importance of education and awareness. The more people understand about deepfakes and how they're created, the better equipped we'll be to spot them and prevent them from spreading misinformation. But it's not just about deepfakes. There are concerns about AI being used for malicious purposes, like creating harmful content or even automating discrimination. These are serious issues that we need to address head on if we want to ensure that AI is used for good.
Okay, that's a lot to process. It seems like with every exciting AI breakthrough, there's a whole other set of challenges and risks to consider. So where do we go from here? What's the takeaway for our listeners?
It's definitely a lot to wrap your head around. Don't get discouraged. This report wasn't meant to scare anyone, but rather to start a conversation, to get people thinking critically about the future we're creating with AI. The key takeaway here is that AI isn't just some abstract concept anymore. It's here, it's evolving faster than ever, and it's already shaping our world in profound ways. And as we've seen, it's not just about faster chips or fancier algorithms, it's about answering some fundamental questions about what we value as a society.
Those are some pretty big questions. So for our listeners who are just tuning into this world of AI and all its complexities, what's the one thing you want them to remember from our deep dive today?
That's easy. Remember that the future of AI isn't something that's just going to happen to us. It's something we're actively creating with every choice we make, every product we develop, and every regulation we put in place. So stay informed, stay engaged, and let's work together to make sure AI is a force for good in the world.
Beautifully said. That's all the time we have for today, folks. But don't worry, this is just the beginning of our exploration into the ever-evolving world of AI. Until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and as always, thanks for joining us for another deep dive.